Today we are going to learn about gravity. So we're going to start with a few questions, and if you don't know the answer, that's totally okay. So here's our first scenario. Imagine you have to move a lot of boxes. Which would be easier, picking the boxes up or setting them down? Feel free to pause the video while you think about these answers and check out the Jamboard for the answer and what other people are saying. And why do you think one of these actions might be easier? And what remains the same in both picking the box up and setting it down? Feel free to pause the video and check out the Jamboard. We're going to start with some vocabulary so the rest of the lesson makes sense. Weight is the force gravity applies to an object, and mass is the amount of matter in an object. And gravitational force is the force between two objects. Oftentimes you'll see this, people talking about this with the Earth and a person, or the Earth and an object that's falling. So something like that is what we generally see. But this can be applied in other scenarios as well. So we're going to do some experiments of our own, and you're going to need some materials. You're going to need two balls of a different mass. So this could be a marble and a tennis ball, or a tennis ball and a soccer ball, something like that. Then you're going to need two balls of the same mass. I use two tennis balls. You can use two soccer balls, two marbles, whatever you want. And you're also going to need an inclined surface. So I use books and a ruler, as you can see on the right. You can also use blocks and some cardboard, or whatever else you can come up with. So for our first experiment, we're going to start with two balls of a different mass at a similar height. You're going to let go of them and observe the similarities and difference of their movement. It is helpful if you want to record it in slow-mo like I did, just so you can really observe their movement. As you can see, these balls are a different mass, and they're falling from the same height. And that's all the first experiment is. So let's think about some questions from our observations. So does the mass impact the time it takes for each ball to fall? Did they fall at the same time, or did they not, And why do you think the ball falls down? Feel free to check back at our vocabulary if you're stuck, and check out the Jamboard if you want to see the answer and other people's responses. And now we have our second experiment. We're going to start with two balls of the same mass, with ball 1 at the top of a ramp and ball 2 at a similar height above the ground. You're going to compare the time it takes for each ball to reach the ground. You see, these balls are at the same height, just one is on an incline and one is going straight down. As you can see, one falls sooner than the other. So now for some questions. How did the ramp impact the motion of the ball? Think about what direction it went, and maybe even the speed it went. Is the gravitational force the same in both trials? So again, check out our Jamboard and pause this video if you're stuck and want to think about it. Revisit our experiment videos. And yeah. So now we're going to have a quick discussion. So, does the mass of the object impact the speed of it falling down? Feel free to pause this while you think, and if you're stuck, look at this little GIF below. As you can see, the mass is increasing, but they're still falling at the same speed. So, how would the movement or speed change if you tossed an object upwards or sideways? Pause the video and check out the GIFs below if you're stuck and need a more visual representation. And what is constant regardless of the initial direction of the throw? Think about where the ball ends up and its movement. As you can see, it is always going down because of gravity, the force between the object that's being thrown and the Earth. So we're going to take a look at the Jamboard, and we're probably going to want to discuss the results, maybe discuss it with some of your peers, or just think about each result. Do you notice the examples of gravitational forces in your everyday life? Think about sports you play, even if you just drop something, things like that. So now we have a scenario to explain, and you can use the new vocabulary. Feel free to go back in this video and check out the vocabulary if you're stuck. So the moon orbits the Earth, and these both orbit the sun, right? So how does gravity influence the orbit? Remember that gravity is the force between two objects. Generally, when we're talking about it, it's the Earth and something else, but it doesn't have to be. So the Jamboard will have a more complete answer, and we'll also link a video if you're stuck. As you can see, this is supposed to mimic orbit, and yeah, and now we have our Scientist of the Week, which is Ellen Ochoa. So she is the first Hispanic woman in space. She was a crew member on 4 missions. She was also the first Hispanic and second female director of the Johnson Space Center. She was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, which is NASA's highest award, and she works on optical information processing. So she's done a whole bunch of really cool stuff. If you're curious, you can check out the links below. And that concludes our lesson. Thank you so much for watching. Again, check out the Jamboard if you want a more like discussion-based format. And I hope you've enjoyed.